quick story here. This book is, it's called Likutei Sipurei Svaidos. Quite a nice thick book, collection of stories by Fabrengens and many other things, writings. This is a collection of stories and other things that Rabbi Greenglass, Olav Shalom, the celebrated Mashpia here in Montreal, the Mashpia of Anash. So this, after his passing, this was collated, collected, and published, and it's a wonderful book. And there are thousands of stories here, and teachings and insights and wonderful letters and correspondence. So I just happened to open up to the following story. And since we're coming now from hundreds, I hope he has there's sections on the different under the Rebbe. So since we're coming now from 100 years since the Istalkus of the Rebbe Rashab in Beis Nissen a few days ago, story with the Rebbe Rashab. So he says like this: by the Rebbe Rashab, there was a time that the one who was in charge of the Seder of Yechidus was Reb Chonye Barozov, may Hashem avenge his blood, the celebrated Chassid. Zalman Morozov's grandfather, Mendel Morozov's grandfather, great-grandfather. So the Seder was that before he would allow someone into Yechidus, he would go into the Rebbe Rashab and ask whether this person asked permission for him to enter. So once it happened, the Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rashab to Chonye, his name was Elchanan. His name was Elchanan Dov Morozov, Rosh Tevis Adam. The Rebbe Rashab said on him, he's the emissary Adam. So once the Rebbe told the Chonye that he doesn't feel well, and he's asking him that there should be no to stop the line, as it were, and there's not seeing anybody more on this occasion. But outside the Rebbe's room at that time was a bocher, and the bocher cried out that no, he said to Chonye, he has to go into the Rebbe in Yechidus. It's a negeya ben nefesh, it's a negeya mamish to his very life. Okay, so Reb Chonye went into the Rebbe and gave over what the bocher said, that there's a bocher that is in a certain terrible matzav, and he needs to see the Rebbe, and he cannot wait. When the Rebbe Rashab heard this, he agreed to allow him into Yechidus. Strangely, after the Yechidus with the bocher, the Rebbe Rashab tells Chonye, okay, so now others can now also come. So Rabbi Chonye, in his thought, he couldn't understand. The Rebbe just told him that he doesn't feel well, and he just managed to get this bocher who had pleaded, and now the Rebbe is saying others can come. What happened? As he's having these thoughts, the Rebbe turns to him, the Rebbe Rashab, and says, when a bocher enters in Yechidus, he is mechayeh my nefesh, and gives me new chayes, and therefore is able to continue the Yechidus. This is similar to the Ata Tetzaveh. Now obviously we can see from the story that the bocher didn't come asking advice in Parnasa. It was obviously he was asking for adracha in Avodah Ruchnis, and it was so negeya b'nefesh that he begged Chonye to allow him in, and this caused such nachas ruach that it was so negeya to the bocher's Avodah Ruchnis that he begged for Yechidus, that it was gave the Rebbe chizuk and chayes, and therefore the others in his chus were also able to enter into Yechidus then. This reminds me of what the Rebbe said. The first Purim, the very first Purim Tafshin Yud Aleph, you hear it on the tape, the Rebbe cries when he says this, that Esther said, Ubechein Ovei El HaMelech Asheloi Kados. There's three overchains. There's the three overchains of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, v'chein tzadikim, v'chein tein pachtacha, three overchains, and there's a fourth overchain, and that was which Esther said, v'chein ove el HaMelech Asheloi Kados, and so I will come to the king unbidden. And Rebbe cried when he said that when a Yid knows that there the Melech sits, and even though he's hasn't been invited, and he's holding far, and what right does he have to go? It's, the story about Hashgacha Pratis is similar to the Chacham's cry. He's holding before Matan Torah. What shaychus does he have to all the inyanim? Similar. But in his desire to be there, he pushes his way. Instead of his word, and he has to be connected. Then the Melech extends his Shavet HaZohov. And as we read in the story here, the Rebbe Rashab received him. Not only that, in his chos opened, as it were, was Makabel, all the others in Yechidus. We're running out of time, but each one could think about the application of this after Gimel Tammuz. This is a story that speaks to each one of us after Gimel Tammuz.